Business Focus with Kudzie, Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.
Business Focus, as always, with Kudzie, Sharara. Good morning to you, Kudzie. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Nashi. Good morning, everyone.
We appreciate it's Business Focus, as always. So, Kudzie, let's look at a lot of the things that are happening in the world of business. Let's begin with the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange trading update for yesterday.
Thank you, Tinashe. So yesterday was another down day on the VRC. The market coming off again with the top 10 index losing 0.71%. In fact, let me put it this way. I think we could say it was trading flat because you have your top 10 index coming off, then you have your medium cap index gaining, and then you've got your top 15 coming off as well. So it was sort of like a mixed bag. And looking at the losers for the day, ZB Financial Holdings was the biggest loser with a 6.24% drop, followed by EcoCash Holdings, second day running, where it is closing in the negative territory, down by 4.86%. Econet also coming off by 2.69%. And then you have Star Africa easing 1.69%, and then Tanganda dropping by 0.22%. So this is the first time that Tanganda has recorded a drop in its share price since its announcement that it is set to delist from the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and list on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, and also raise about $7.7 million. And then, however, there were other counters that recorded gains. CFI being the top riser with a 14.99% gain. Mashonaland Holdings continues with its winning streak, up by 12.04% to take its year-to-date gain to 1,655%. So that's that has been a good run for Mash Holdings. Miku's also up by a marginal 0.31%. Wheeldale up by 0.22%. ZHL up by 0.09%. I remember Wheeldale, at some point they announced to the market that they were looking at using some of their idle land for housing development, and they've been quiet about that. So hopefully, if the executives are listening, maybe it's time that they give the market an update in terms of where they are with regards using some of their idle land for residential development. So that's Wheeldale there. And then on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, the market was positive, up by 0.52%, and about $130,000 changing hands there on the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange. And that's how the markets were performing yesterday.
All right, Kudzie, thank you so much for that. Before we move on to the next subject, there is a question coming up from Muzina Mshonga. He says, there have been reports of widespread retrenchment and company closures. Is this true, and can this be attributed by current volatility?
Look, I can't deny or confirm whether there's been widespread retrenchment from various companies, although we have had a few that have done that have been in the public domain to say this is what we are doing. I think we have seen that from the miners, for example. We see it from Mimosa. We also saw it from Zimplats. We also saw it from CBZ that have already also retrenched quite a number of their executives, and they are now looking at also how they can also do it with regards to the rest of their staff complement. So there is that retrenchment through probably what they are calling restructuring, but it's the retrenchment all the same that is happening for these institutions they've been in the public domain with their information. So I wouldn't say it's entirely because of current distortions, because if you look at the miners, the platinum miners, for example, it's because the price of platinum has significantly come down to the extent that I think some of the prices, if you look at the price of palladium, for example, at some point it was trading above $2,000. Now it's below $1,000. And obviously that will hit your top line, it will hit your bottom line, and you need to do something about your cost of doing business. And unfortunately, sometimes it then leads to retrenchment, but it's not because of the current distortion. And then you look at CBZ, we are now going into the digital era where there is a digital transformation across various industries, and where employees are being replaced by machines, by artificial intelligence, and realignment of the businesses. You know, you might have some units, for example, for CPZ, they said some of the units where they had like people who were called to be an executive, but the units were so small for them to have an executive, and you need to then restructure and realign. So, but I can't rule out that current distortions have also resulted probably in some businesses struggling, and and it won't be a surprise to say some companies have had to retrench, because whatever they are earning now is not enough to sustain their workforce.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Kudzie. Hopefully our listener has been answered on that. 14 minutes before 8. You have questions to do with business. Drop them up on 0719 100404. Kudzie Sharara will be able to help us understand more out of that. Kudzie, let's look at the latest update in terms of Delta Corporation results.
Thank you, Tinashe. So Delta released their half-year results to the month of September. So their full year is up to March, then their half year is up to September. So they've come up with their numbers to tell us how they are doing as a business. And when you look at their lager beers, for example, they are still recording gains. Volumes were up by 9%. So they are now selling about 1.27 million hectoliters of lager beer, or what we call clear beer, up by 9%. However, when it comes to their sorghum beer, it seems that they are struggling a bit. In fact, it's across all countries where they are operating. So their sorghum beer, which we call that traditional beer in Zimbabwe, or must they say, they put their own name for their brands, but it's sorghum beer all the same. And they are struggling across the countries that they operate in. So in Zimbabwe, volumes were down by 11%. And I'll tell you later on the reasons they gave for that drop. Then you go to Zambia, volumes were down by 20%. You go to South Africa, volumes were also down by 8%. So it hasn't been good for their sorghum beer. And, in Zimbabwe, for example, there is now a new player in that category, that's Insco, through their brand that is coming into the market of traditional beer. And obviously, it might have taken some market share from Delta. But management at Delta were not quick to admit that it is this particular new entrant that has come in. But they are blaming it on other illicit alcohol that is coming to the country. One that they mentioned is the popular Kambwa, which they believe that is also, because it's cheap, it's also taking market share away from their sorghum beer volumes. Also, I think the drought also contributed, because sorghum beer is also consumed in the rural areas, and because of the drought, so the purchasing power for those in the rural areas might have been lower than before, and it affects the volume. So these are some of the reasons they gave. In some markets, instances, they are also giving away market share because they cannot supply certain distributors, for example, wholesalers or formal retail stores, because of the issues of currency distortions that are used in these formal stores are supposed to use the official rate, and they are also they are largely paying in ZiG, and they are facing competition from the so-called tax shops and the informal sector. And Delta at some point is having to make a decision to say, should we continue to supply this formal retailer, and yet we are losing value from our products that we are selling to this particular one. And in some instances, they then have to decide to say, no, let's not supply this particular retail outlet or wholesaler. And obviously, it means you are giving up market share, you are giving up shelf space to your competitor, and this is what is also maybe probably leading to that drop in volume.
Okay.
And then for the soft,
let's go, Kudzie.
Yeah, for the soft drink business, volumes were actually up in Zimbabwe, up by 10%. That's for the sparkling, what they call sparkling beverages. But this is Zimbabwe, Thomas, they are semi-soft drinks. And despite the coming in of a big competitor in the form of Varan, which does the Pepsi brands and the like, Delta is still selling more than they were selling in prior years. So as much as the market share has come off, I think their market share has come down significantly there. But in terms of the volume that they are selling, they are still selling more than they were doing prior year. So for sparkling beverages, Delta's market share is now, according to them, is now at 64%. But in terms of the volume that they are selling, they are still selling more than they were selling in the last 5 years. So that's an interesting analysis there, where their volumes for this particular period we are talking about are the highest since 2021. So you can see that they are still growing, despite the fact that there are other players that is coming into that space.
All right, Kudzie, let's take a break. When we come back, we get to discuss more on the subject that we left hanging yesterday in terms of the labor force report. We're taking a break. When we come back, we discuss more in a bit.
We've got it all. A wide range of industrial, agricultural, and domestic wire solutions from Continental Wire products, including razor wire, barbed wire, game fencing, palisade fencing, and more. Plus a variety of wire nails. Visit us at Corner Oakland and Plymouth Road, Southerton, Harare today, or call us on 0788 194 756 now. Also find Continental Wire products on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Continental Wire products, the ultimate in fencing.
Business Focus with Kudzie Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.
Welcome back to Business Focus, as always, with Kudzie Sharara. So yesterday, Kudzie, we left it hanging. The labor force survey. What's the update? Let's talk about it.
Thank you, Tinashe. So yes, Zimsted released the labor force survey for the period under review, and it's been there were interesting numbers that they shared with regards. This is for the third quarter of 2024. So they've got numbers that they are comparing the first quarter of 2024 versus the third quarter of 2024. And according to them, when you look at the working age population, so the working age population in Zimbabwe, it means that people who are eligible to work. So this is anyone who is 16 years and above is known as to be part of the working age population. And according to the numbers, the working age population in Zimbabwe is actually coming off from 8.61 million to 8.58 million. So there was a drop there. And then you look at what is known as the labor force, which is again a labor force for these are people who are under who are 16 years and above as well. There was also a drop in that labor force from 4.1 million to 4 million. So again, there was a drop, and the labor force participation rate was down from 48% to 47.6%. Then I was also looking at the total number of people who are said to be employed in Zimbabwe. The total number of people who are said to be employed in Zimbabwe. It also came off from 3.28 million to 3.19 million. So there was that significant drop in terms of total employed people. It means that there is probably about 100,000 people who were employed in the first quarter who are no longer employed, who were no longer employed in the third quarter. There could be reasons for that. One of those reasons is, for example, if you look at the agriculture sector, where employment is seasonal. So in the agricultural sector, for example, you could see that the number of people employed in the agriculture sector dropped from 754,000 in the first quarter to 648,000. So the third quarter is your period from July, August, September. And I think there isn't much agriculture activity during that period. When you compare it with the first quarter, which is January, February, March, where people, so you need a little bit of more people to work. So that could be the reason why the number of employed people actually came off. And then another interesting statistic there, Tinashe, is the number of people who are said to be informally employed. And get this right. So there is the informal sector. We've got people who are employed in the informal sector. But some might be employed in the informal sector, but they will be formally employed, registered with NASA. I would like to believe if you are formally employed, then your paperwork is in NASA, you are properly registered. But however, of the people who are said to be employed in Zimbabwe, which is 3.19 million, more than 2 million, I think 2.1 million are informally employed. But paperwork you are not registered. You are not registered even to NASA. Nobody knows you. NASA. Other contributions donate for Zimbabwe maybe pay as UN. All these taxes and NASA contributions, nobody knows about you. So you are informally employed, even though you are going to work. So 2.1 million people of those 3.1 million people are informally employed. And then when you look at those who are employed in the informal sector, there are about 2.7 million people who are employed in the informal sector. So the informal sector remains the biggest employer in Zimbabwe. And then another statistic that I want to look at is to say distribution of employed population in the informal sector. To say in that informal sector, in which sectors are these people working? So you find that most people are employed in the wholesale and retail trade. That's where most people, about 32%, are employed in the wholesale and retail trade. And then followed by agriculture, about 25%, mining, 12%, manufacturing, 8%. So this is how Zimbabweans are employed in the informal sector. Those are the sectors that employ more people. And the last number I want to share there, Tinashe, maybe before allowing for questions, is which sector is paying more in Zimbabwe. So there's what they call the average income for employed persons by industry. To say which sector is the biggest or the best payer in Zimbabwe. So I'm not sure if you can get, maybe you want to guess, Tinashe, which sector do you think is the best employer in terms of better salaries or average income?
You have put me on the spotlight on that one.
The listeners can also help you.
Yeah, okay, pause the question one more time.
Yeah, so which sector do you think is the best payer in terms of salaries, income within any industry in Zimbabwe? Which industry do you think pays better than any other industry?
Mm-hmm. Some answers are coming on WhatsApp. Others are saying that the motor industry, the telecoms industry, and the beer industry, the mining sector. Those are some of okay. I think those are some of that.
Because of time, so because of time, I was just going to give you the answer, and it was also a surprise to me. So, but after seeing it and then thinking about it, I said, that could be true. So the real estate sector, that's the best paying sector at the moment. And we have seen the construction, the housing developments that are taking place. I think maybe. So they are paying on average 18,346 ZiG, which is roughly 500 US using the parallel market rate. Roughly 500 US. So that's the average. And it's the real estate sector, followed by the financial services sector. And then you've got your electricity sector. And then, so that's the best paying sector, the real estate sector.
All right, Kudzie, more questions are coming through in terms of that labor force report. But unfortunately, our time is up for today. We discuss more. We just pin some of those messages and questions for tomorrow. Thank you so much for today. We appreciate.
Thank you, Tinashe.
Business Focus with Kudzie Sharara on the Champions League Breakfast.